I will read the land acknowledgement. The city of Thorold is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattaway-Downright, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The city of Thorold stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Are there any declarations of interest? Okay, seeing none, I'll go on to item 4, adoption of the agenda. Can I get a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Longo and seconded by, was that John?
Yes, I'll second that.
Okay. All those, I'll call the question now. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Okay, that's carried unanimous. Item number 5, adoption of the minutes from Friday, May 5th, 2023. Can I get a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes?
So moved.
Okay, moved by John and seconded by Councillor Longo. I'll call the question now. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Okay, that's unanimous. I have item 6. I have no correspondence to report from here. Is there anything that the city would have? Okay. Okay, moving on to item 7, a presentation, DQ Road Extension. This is Sean Dunsmore will be giving us an update on this particular project. So I'll turn the meeting over to Mr. Dunsmore. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Very good, thank you.
I'm here to talk about the DQ Road project. Essentially, it's the extension of the multi-use trail on the DQ Road, as well as urbanization from Richmond to Beaver Dam. So it's going to become a curb and sidewalk and stuff like that.
Okay.
Show you some information if I could share my screen.
There you go. You should be able to now.
So can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not going to do too much moving around on this screen because it doesn't load very quickly on my screen, so on my computer. So, but what you'll see on this drawing kind of continues through the rest of the area, and you can see this drawing is posted on our website under the thorold.ca under engineering / capital projects / DQ road reconstruction. Okay.
Okay.
Some of the highlights that you want to see on this is that on the south side of the road here, there's a multi-use trail that runs along the south side, very similar to that of on the other side of Richmond Street of DQ, except for on the opposite side of the road. The intersection of Richmond and DQ will be used to help transfer those bicycles and or pedestrians across the road to the multi-use trail on the south side. You'll also notice that there's some installation of a parking area in the Melsport Park to help access what would be the toboggan hill and the more passive end of the park during peak season, specifically toboggan season, when we have all sorts of parking along the edge of this road. So try to accommodate that, we were taking some off-road angled parking on that road. You also notice as you is that the road itself is deviating away from the existing road allowance. You might be able to notice it in the background, the property lines kind of out here, but the road itself is pushing a little bit towards that tree line. That is due to a safety issue with the way that road is working right now. The nice side effect of that is it'll create some open space on the north side of the road, which we could program, meaning one of the concepts that's come up on some of the other committees that we've talked to about this is maybe making this signage, an area for some signage for the Melswart Park area. There's a similar washout, if you will, of old road allowance down at the other end, right in front of the DeQ Terrace subdivision, for the almost exactly the same reason, is that we had to realign the road a little bit to make it function better and safer. So that signage idea could potentially carry on to that other end as well. Right now, the project is in very early stages, meaning that it's we put together some conceptual plans. We looked at some potential options. We have a lot of work to do in terms of doing studies and making sure that we're happy with the decisions that are going to be made, which haven't been made at this point in time, including more public outreach and summarizing and adopting any of the comments that we received during the first PIC. I don't know what else to say about it. Let me know if there's any questions, and you can always contact us. The questions don't have to just come through this forum. Anytime, any place, we will certainly talk about it.
Okay, thank you, Sean. I do have one question. I wasn't available to attend the first PIC. Can you touch on that a bit, like the attendance and what kind of comments and feedback you got from the people that attended?
The attendance was well attended. Some of the comments, I think some of the people there struggled to stay on topic, if you will. Comments that they wanted to talk about was the signalization down at the other end at Beaver Dams.
Okay.
The conversation, one of the conversations became around trying to line up that intersection of DeQ and Beaver Dams with Beaver Dams and Marlets, which, although a good idea, will add significant costs and significant complexity to the project. At this point in time, it would kind of be beyond the scope of what we were hoping to achieve in this project. Not to say it's not a good idea. And I did manage to get my screen to move around there, as you can see.
Yeah.
And you can see that washout area kind of right there on the north side at the corner of Beaver Dams and DeQ there. That could be a signage for Melswart Park, if that's the idea.
Okay.
In terms of, it was well attended. I will tell you, it did struggle. The other thing that was mentioned was the sidewalk on the north side of the road. You can see it kind of here. Some people liked it, some people didn't. And then there was an interesting conversation about street lighting on the project, because at the time, the Melswart Park was looking at this dark sky application, and putting street lights that close to a dark sky conservation area is going to be problematic in terms of developing that dark sky. So
Okay.
those conversations were happening. No decisions were made, but we will continue to push forward with that.
Okay, thank you. So what other committees have been involved with commenting?
You name it, I think they've been it. Active transportation has been involved. Traffic safety has been involved. You guys, of course, and I think we talked to the Melswart Park directly. Some of the members of the Melswart Park committee.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Longo, you've got a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a quick question, Sean. The multi-use trail, the new multi-use trail, will there be a buffer between that and the roadway? So does that green line show?
Yeah, the
buffer?
green line is grass.
Okay,
Yeah, and in some locations, we actually show, and I know we're not down to we show some trees being planted in that area. So,
Oh, I see.
right, you can kind of see them across. It appears that they're about, that buffer zone is about 2 meters,
Okay,
which is enough to store some snow and plant some trees. Okay.
okay.
yeah, it just from my perspective, it makes you feel a little safer when the path has something between it and the roadway. So that's a good thing. Good.
Yep.
Okay, noted. Thank you. When we're talking about the intersection where DQ meets Beaver Dams, and people were talking about, looking at alignment with Marlets, it originally did just a few years ago, wasn't it? It aligned, and then the city put that arc, so to speak, to bring DQ Road out to a further south location on Beaver Dams. What was the reason for doing that?
First of all, they still didn't line up.
Oh, okay,
They weren't right even back then.
okay,
It was closer though. Like, and
Yeah.
you can actually see it on the drawing. The old road allowance is still there. That's that property line is
Okay.
the old road allowance. That's where it used to come. It still didn't run into the intersection properly. And the reason it was moved is to make this a 90-degree angle between Beaver Dams and DQ, because that's a safer intersection. And that's the regional standard at this point in time. And because Beaver Dams is a regional road,
oh,
that intersection is actually a regional intersection.
okay,
So because we were in DQ Terrace was doing some work, or was being built, that opportunity to move that intersection came up, and the region jumped at it to square that up and make it a safer intersection.
okay. So that land in that 90-degree corner, that is now city property?
That, yeah, it was actually taken out of Melswar Park and become road allowance.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Any other questions from anybody? Comments? No, I think, okay. So what's the next step from your end, Sean?
We have a bunch of studies that we have to do, environmental studies and sewer design studies, and we need to get into some more detail about how this is actually going to work. These pretty pictures, as they may be, don't really get into the details about the grading and so forth. So we are going to move through that process, and hopefully sometime in the fall we'll be able to come back and have another PIC and incorporate all the comments that we received from everybody, as well as any of the results from the studies that we received.
Okay.
And then we will report back, and hopefully we can have a recommended solution by the end of the year.
Okay, thank you. If we go back to the Richmond intersection, where the frog pond is, it is the first phase of this reconstruction. I guess it stopped at Richmond. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Okay, so there's not going to be any impact on the frog pond when the construction starts again from Richmond heading east.
Yeah, I want to say, I don't want to say none, but very little. The frog pond is to the west of the intersection. And
Right.
all this will be to the east of that intersection, if north is actually up.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah,
But
oh.
but construction, of course, always spreads. And
Yeah.
so there'll be some dust and some, but we'll make sure that we don't pile any material in there for sure.
Okay, I'm looking at the bottom left-hand corner of the drawing where it says existing drainage swale. Is that work that's going on right now? Because I see that, it's kind of fenced off and the ground has been cleared. Is that drainage?
That drainage swale isn't the one that you see cut out
Okay.
there. It's a little bit further to the west.
Okay,
The one further to the west is actually the outlet for the stormwater management pond for the stormwater management pond that's going to go right in beside the frog pond.
okay,
Okay.
okay, thank you. Anybody else have any comments or questions on this particular project? Okay, seeing none, I guess I thank you for that, Sean. And then you do keep us up to date. I'm sure you will. I'm going to move on to item 8, committee business, and this is an update on the Broderick Avenue. It had been discussed at our last meeting that it was thought that there wasn't going to be a PIC until about July, but we did get one, or later June, pardon me. But we did get one this past Wednesday night, and I attended it. And I'm going to ask Sean if he can, if he's got anything that they drew from that particular meeting that he can update the committee with right now.
In terms of feedback we received from that particular meeting was everybody was very positive. They were happy that we modified the design to accommodate their input that they gave on PIC3. Generally, the design now is replace as is. There is going to be a few trees that we did have an arborist report and they identified as in poor condition. So those ones will be removed and replaced. But generally the PIC on Wednesday night, although we had a bit of a problem with security and getting people in, we did have 18 people show up. The general comments were very much in support of the fact that we're leaving the road essentially the way it is.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I attended and yeah, they were really pleased. The only comment that that I heard from the majority of them was they seem to have a concern with grass being in the median. I think we raised in our meetings a couple times the possibility of either doing drought resistant ground covers or even sage grasses. Some of the comments that I heard, and I did point out what you had told us, that they were on a 2-week maintenance schedule for cutting grass. And they were commenting that this time of the year, April, May, 2 weeks is way too long to come in and cut the grass. And some of the neighbors were taking it upon themselves to go out there with their own tractors and cut. So that led to the conversation at that particular PIC that, people were referring to what we were saying in our meetings about ground covers. And I believe our NPCA rep, Carrie Royer, she mentioned the last meeting about Vineland Research, possibly reaching out to them for suggestions on what could be planted. And I think you did agree to that, or you have reached out to them?
I haven't reached out to them, but I did agree to that. We will certainly do that. Yep.
Okay, is this something, this is going to be like the cosmetics when the project comes near the end, when, you get a better idea of where the costs are and how we want to look at this down the road. I mean, if we get into something like a grass or a ground cover, I'm sure that, some departments in the city would be happy that there'd be a maintenance cost reduction in something like this. So it would be nice if we could be kept in the loop on that for tying in with the citizens, some of the Broderick Ave residents, when it comes time to, the tree planting and ground covers going in, that we can work with them to get an idea of what they'd like to see.
Okay, we can certainly reach out, and we have a long list of people now who have been involved in the project. We can certainly reach out and talk about a different process, different material, so that
Okay.
they can understand what it is that we're hoping to install there.
Okay, great. Anybody comments or questions on this particular project? The residents seem to be at least happy that it's moving in this direction. It's probably starting a little bit later than the city would have liked to, and I know Ugo was mentioning at the meeting that they have to work quickly because asphalt is not available after late October, November, so they want to get at least a top coat of asphalt on the road before winter comes in, and then they'll be looking at phase 2 next year.
That's right.
Okay, if there's no further questions, I'll move on, and I'll thank Mr. Dunsmore for his presentations, and we look forward to the updates on these projects. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to move on to 8.2, selection of vice chair. Sydney, should we really be holding this with we haven't really got a lot of members here. Would it be best to hold it off one more meeting so that we know we've got a better representation of people that might want to put their hand up?
Sure, through you, Mr. Chair, if you'd like, we can definitely defer this until the next agenda.
Okay. Is everybody in favor with that? Or does somebody want to jump in and?
I'd like to move to defer this, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, is this a motion that we have to put forward, Sydney?
That would be preferable, yes.
Okay, can I get a seconder?
No second.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, we move on to 8.3, a boulevard planting. We really haven't created any kind of a working group or even talked about creating a working group. I know originally this got brought up way back in the start of our term. Leslie Daniels raised it. Ava Salter had provided some documentation, but with her resignation from the committee, it's got to be it's going to move on to somebody else that might want to take this project on. Leslie, would you be interested in starting a working group to get some ideas of how we can move a project like this forward? You're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute.
I did
There
that
we
on
go.
purpose in case my dogs start barking, but did anyone come up with a name for this type of project? Or haven't you discussed it? Because I've
No, we didn't have any discussion at the last meeting. I was hoping we could have. You weren't in attendance, so I thought I'd raise it now. I don't know exactly what the procedure would be for this. I'd probably refer to Councillor Longo if he would, or Sydney would give us some idea of what we do. Do we tie in with staff and discuss how we want to establish a boulevard planting policy? Comments, Councillor Longo?
I'll defer this to the clerk's department
Okay.
because it's procedural.
Yes.
Thank
Okay,
you.
this is what I'm after. Okay,
Yeah.
Sydney?
So through you, Mr. Chair, for a working group, there would just need to be a motion to create the working group, what the working group would cover, and the length of time the working group would be present for. And then once a working group is established, they can meet outside of committee time. There has to be less than a quorum of members on the working group. And then there's no minutes, there's no staff support or anything like that, but they can talk to relevant staff members to get the information they need. And then once they come up with their ideal solution or whatever it is, they can report back to this committee, and then this committee would make the recommendations to council.
Okay. Leslie, comments?
No, originally I talked to Jeff about this because it came up in downtown Thorold, a couple of boulevards that are planted, but what they planted are cacti, and they're dangerous going over sidewalks. And that's how it came up originally, but
Okay.
there was no bylaw. So we were
Right.
told, Jeff told me that if I wanted to set up a working group, then we could start discussing the things that Sydney was talking about, but I waited for this committee. So
Okay.
there's still support out there for boulevard planting, believe me.
Sure. If you would be part of this working group, I'm sure that it's going to take some time, but you have the advantage of being the president of the Thorold Garden Club, and you could probably use that as maybe a little bit of a launching platform, because you've got members that these kind of things can be talked about in your meetings, and that would help us spread the word about the feasibility of this. And your group could also be used for guidance on establishing a list of suitable plants and possible rules and regulations governing how the boulevards will be planted, and working with the city to ensure that the bylaw officers would understand what they have to be watching for. You're dealing with maybe an application process that the people have to go through.
Yeah, it is actually. In other municipalities, they have to sign on if they decide they want to do that, because the problem is always watering. So
Yes.
if they won't take care of it, then the deal was the city in other municipalities would just come in and mow it all down.
Right.
Because they weren't buying into doing that part of it, but they thought it was a good idea. And I do have a stack of research that's been done on municipalities all over Ontario
Okay.
for their bylaws. So it would be helpful, and we have a start anyway.
Okay. Would you be interested in leading a working group? And perhaps if anybody on the committee right now that's in attendance wants to join in with you, or we could get somebody from the next meeting when we get a quorum that would likely join. I'd be interested in working along with you myself. I mean, I do have an interest in boulevard planting and quite a bit of experience. I mean, we've had our boulevards planted for 25 years maybe. There's a lot of experimentation that we've gone through, trial and error. I mean, we're on a southeast corner intersection, and a lot of pavement that soaks up a lot of heat and sun. And, we lost a lot of plants, and we had to figure out what works with full sun and very hot climates. And we seem to have it now. It was a little bit of watering for the first 2 summers, and now I don't even touch it. In the winter, come fall, I just cut some of the stuff back, mostly so that the snow doesn't end up crushing when the plows go by. But we haven't lost anything in the last couple of years. Okay, so Sydney, I need to put a motion for this. Okay, this is to create a working group for boulevard planting. Can I have a mover for this working group? Okay, Leslie moves. Can I get a seconder for this?
I'll second.
Okay, John? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Okay, that's carried. That's great. Thank you. Yeah, I would say we might want to set a timeline on this. So let's give us a couple of years on this. I think it's not going to move real quick. Going back and forth, and then the timing that's going to be, I can't see us having anything in place for next spring that we would want to have people start planting, but next year, definitely we could start getting the word out that, maybe we've been successful in establishing some kind of a policy and we can start promoting it. Comments? Anybody else got a comment on this? Okay, seeing none. Let's move on to 8.4, working groups. John, do you have anything on, you had that tree?
Oh, the Tree Canada grant.
Yes.
The grant process begins in October. That's when the applications are accepted. So I haven't done anything further. I mean, I looked at the website just yesterday, as a matter of fact. Excuse me. The municipality is eligible for up to $10,000 for a project. If there are community groups, schools, that sort of thing, also interested in planting trees and woody shrubs, I might point out, they're eligible for up to $3,500 per grant. So that's in each grant year, you can get $3,500. So okay. My thinking is, and we also created a working group for the 10,000 trees initiative.
Yes.
And I'm thinking that maybe the two working groups need to be in close communication. That all the tree stuff should sort of happen on group.
Yeah.
rather than making, because if we were to get a $10,000 grant to plant, I don't know how many trees. I mean, that would certainly count towards the 10,000 trees initiative.
Okay, very good. Yeah.
So I think that the Tree Canada grant is a sort of a subcommittee of the 10,000 trees. The other funding opportunity is the Billion Trees Initiative, or 2 Billion Trees Initiative, which is a government of Canada. But the community would have to undertake to plant 10,000 trees in 1 year in order to get funding. So I don't know how practical that is.
Okay. Thank you. I'm gonna, when you talked about the other working group we got with that was Councillor O'Hare with the 10,000 tree. He sent me an email, and he was talking about exactly what I think maybe there has to be some kind of a subcommittee here, because he's talking about reaching out to private industry businesses and developers to see if they can get financial contributions from these groups, because he's got the city budget for its tree program is quite small. I think he was saying maybe about $50,000, and he references $600 to plant a tree. Now, I don't know if that is just putting the tree in a hole in the ground, or if that's including maybe some watering costs for the first year or two before it's established. So you can see that at $600 a tree, you've got maybe 100 trees that the city's got a budget for planting, which really is not a lot. So that $10,000 would certainly contribute. So, we've got two working groups that I think you're right in saying that they should be working a little closer together. Perhaps we can continue some dialogue a little later on about maybe just merging it together as one group, or if it's necessary to keep them separate.
Mr. Chair, I can see the reaching out to private industry and to businesses and other groups to contribute to a fund for 10,000 Trees Initiative would be a work-intensive undertaking.
Yeah.
A lot of schmoozing involved,
Yes.
and maybe some blackmail.
Yeah.
And
Greasing the palms.
And so I think that there will be plenty of activity, keep lots of people busy on components of this, but I like the idea of sort of looking at it from the point of view of a tree planted anywhere in the city of Thorold is one of the 10,000 trees, no matter what the funding, no matter where the tree came from, so long as it lives. So
Yes.
I'm interested in pursuing the Tree Canada grant because it's $10,000. So it would be for a discrete project that we could identify, and it would count towards the 10,000 trees. And if we can get schools involved, we could, who knows?
Okay. Okay, thank you. He also mentioned in an email, he's got an idea of creating its own nursery, possibly. I think they're talking, was it Lakeview Cemetery? And basically it's saying we could effectively offer many more trees than is budgeted in City Hall if they develop their own nursery. And that would, it would take a lot of work. There'd be a lot of work with finance and council to have something like this come to fruition and move forward. But I think as we spoke at the last meeting, this is a full-term project, like the working groups that we were creating, yours and the 10,000 tree that we were going to be using pretty well, probably the whole 4 years to get something up and running and really well established. Any other comments on this? Okay. Seeing none. Let's go to 8.5. Earth Day 2024. This was something I touched on at our last meeting, and what I'm looking at is in Thorold on the Earth Day. There's a citywide cleanup, and it's generally the Saturday on the third Saturday of April, and I'm looking at getting Thorold involved with more like a vendor educational type event that would be promoting environmental stewardship. Cleaning up garbage is one thing, but I've noticed over the past several years, I've been involved in several Earth Day vendor events in different cities throughout the Niagara Peninsula. I have a hobby product that I'm making native bee nesting habitats, and I've really seen the growth in the knowledge that people are displaying in trying to be more environmentally conscious on how they're living their daily lives. And I thought of possibly reaching out to the Knights of Columbus, where they have their fertilizer sale and they have compost to give away. And I thought if we could piggyback them and put together an event. They've already got people that are basically coming in for the fertilizer sale. I reached out to them. Actually, I should say that I had a meeting with the Community Events Advisory Committee on May 15th. This was set up between myself. Ava Salter had already stepped down from the committee. So I met with Marcia Coppola and Tony Vandermaas, chair and vice chair of the Community Events Advisory Committee. Matthew Trenham was there, and Stephanie Jarvis, and I believe Tara was there. And they were really on board with the idea of this kind of an event. But what I was requesting was to have the Knights of Columbus, they hold their fertilizer event about a week before Earth Day. And I was suggesting that if I could get them to move it to the Saturday, we could then have it as an Earth Day event. I did reach out to them, and they they weren't quite understanding exactly what I was requesting. I think what they thought I was asking was to be a vendor at their show. And this was new to me because I never knew that the Knights of Columbus had vendors that were selling products at the show. And so I reapplied, or I responded to them and tried to clarify what I was after, but then got no further answer. But during the meeting with the Community Events Committee, Tony Vandermaas pointed out that the vendors, some of the vendors that they have there weren't really environmentally friendly vendors, and it might not be a compatible event to work with. So at the same time, I wasn't too sure where the vendor location or the event location would be held. I was hoping that it would be Holy Rosary, but Councillor Sentence had reached out to me, and he was proposing to put forward a motion to council on a tree giveaway program. And that motion went through at the council meeting this past week, recommending that the Environment, Climate Change and Biodiversity Advisory Committee take on the responsibility of hosting this event. Councillor Sentence also in the council meeting suggested the possibility of linking together with the Knights of Columbus. I'll try again. I'll reach out to them and see if we can get something. Just a minute, Leslie. See if we can get something going, but this is what I'm hoping for. So I know Leslie's hot to say something, so I'll let her come on now.
Okay, so the Knights of Columbus now have what's called a Harvest Fest. They also do their spring fertilizer, but then they do one in the fall. And we've been involved in that, and that would fit your idea perfectly. Get them to give you a corner, either inside or outside, to run that event during their Harvest Fest. What I see as the problem is if we try to do too many things, different things, we're going to lose an audience. So if we can combine it in some way, and I know who the contact is, Tim, that sets up things like that. So that would be a perfect venue for your idea. You could be a co-sponsor, the committee and City Hall could be a co-sponsor and have an area that was all to do with boulevard planting, tree planting, any environmental issue that you're involved in, this committee's involved in, and whatever other ideas you had for that. But if you try to put another event in there, we're running into the same problem. We either partner or we don't do a number of things because we don't have everybody back out doing out of isolation yet. So
Yeah.
the audiences are still smaller and we need to build that up. So we're doing it with partnering.
Well, I understand, and that's what I was hoping, that the Knights of Columbus would understand what I was trying to suggest.
Tim, if you want.
Because this would tie in, like with the tree giveaway, they're also talking about rain barrel sales too, as part of the motion that Councillor Sentence put up. So this would be great in the springtime, and if we could, I'd like to see it really on Earth Day, if the Knights of Columbus would be willing to move a week. I've reached out to Habitat for Humanity, and they're really on board. What they're offering is actually setting up a bin for e-cycling, so people can bring in electronic like toasters and microwaves and stuff like that could be dropped off, and it puts a spotlight on Habitat for Humanity, and people get to start to understand what they do, because I didn't realize that the e-waste that Habitat for Humanity collects, they have a third-party vendor that comes in and pays them money for this e-waste. So this is money that is going into the working funds for Habitat for Humanity to allow them to continue to operate their business. They are a very environmentally friendly company. It's all about reduce, reuse, recycle. This is why I'm looking more towards the focus of Earth Day, because we don't have anything in Thorold of that nature. And it's fine to do an Earth Day cleanup where people go out for 2 hours and they're cleaning up garbage. At the end of the day, you've collected all this garbage, and the next day, the same people that are throwing the garbage on the ground are still throwing garbage on the ground. And I think there has to be a real educational element to Earth Day that we have to be putting out to the people of Thorold and get them really on board and understanding that, you know, you've got earth-friendly cleaning products that are out there that we need to be promoting. There's earth-friendly healthcare products that we can be promoting. There's lifestyle changes that can be discussed that are going to start to reduce your carbon footprint. You know, then there's your planting, like native plants, getting people to do away with that pristine piece of grass in their front yard that's just an eco wasteland. Nothing lives in it. And we need to get people to understand that Thorold is moving in that direction. What was that phrase you used, John? Clean and green, or was it green and clean?
Clean green Thorold.
Clean green Thorold. That's what we have to be
When
promoting.
you're talking about handing out trees, I just see clean green Thorold as part of the communications. When we're talking about 10,000 trees, when we're talking about cleaning up litter, and I've done 3 full garbage bags on the West Side Trail in the last week and a half. And you're right, I've been picking up the remnants of widescreen TVs that have been smashed to pieces, and all this stuff is leached down into the ditch. You know, and lots of Tim Hortons crap, but I won't rant on. Clean green Thorold.
Yeah. Yeah. So what was recommended when I met with the Community Events Committee, Tony Vondermas suggested that I also do a presentation to the DQ task force. He also suggested doing a presentation to the library board because they're involved with the cleanup. So I do have dates for when they're going to be meeting, and I'm going to see, you know, what kind of discussions we can get going with the various committees and where we can go at the end of the day, and see who all we can get on board with this particular initiative. John.
Mr. Chair, when you're talking about communications, something that occurs to me is that the most basic message that we can get across to people is that every day is Earth Day.
Yeah.
And everything follows from that. And that's a very simple message. It may or may not resonate with people. You know, they've got earbuds in, what do they know? But that's a simple message. Every day is Earth Day.
Yeah. Okay, any other comments or suggestions or? Okay, seeing none. I'm going to be meeting with, like I said, these other committees, and then I think I get back to the Community Events Committee July 4th. I think Matthew suggested that I wait till I've talked to the other committees. I think the Community Events has a meeting coming up in a couple of days, but he wanted me to talk to the other committees first before getting back to the Community Events Committee. So I'm gonna set up meetings with the other groups. Okay, now we're item 9, roundtable discussion. Any discussion for the roundtable, John?
I would update you on the dog waste issue.
Yes.
I've been doing some research. I started looking at best practices. I found a really good paper out of the University of British Columbia that looked at the whole of Metro Vancouver and what the various municipalities do. But that actually spends most of its time talking about what you do with the dog waste after you've collected it in order to divert it from the landfill. So it's a whole paper on the treatment of dog waste such that it can end up going to the sewage treatment plant. I also looked at the city of North Vancouver. They have a program and they use a red bin. So they've got, at last count, 41 of them located at strategic points around the city. So parks, dog parks, trails, that sort of thing. And they're just like a regular garbage bin, but they're bright red. And they have a private company that comes and collects the waste, separates the plastic from the waste, and then diverts the waste into the sewage treatment facility. They also have a communications program. So they have a blue sign that they put up close to these red bins. And it says, "There is no dog poo ferry." And there's a fairy with a wand, with the bag of dog waste hanging off the wand, and it then says, "Bin it and bag it." So that's how they've approached it. I don't know how facetious we want to be, but I like the idea of a sign that says there is no dog food ferry.
Yeah, well, I think you've talked earlier that education is probably the starting point right now. So I guess signage is what we're probably looking at. I'm not too sure what exists in the various city parks. I know we do have quite a few parks. You did mention that the JC Park, there's signs about cleaning up the dog waste. I don't know about the other parks. Perhaps maybe we should just start looking at an inventory of what the parks are lacking and start with there. There's probably other locations that signage could be used where you'd reach a number of the residents, maybe city-owned facilities that people are coming and going from, like City Hall. If you got people that are constantly going back and forth to City Hall, and if they can see a sign that says "clean up your dog poop," you've got all these different facilities where we could also put signage too, as a reminder to people to get the message out that it's not acceptable to just leave it. So
there are strategic locations that I've sort of come to understand are strategic locations.
sure,
And some of the research that I've been reading sort of backs this up. So for instance, on the trail, usually it's within 150 meters of the entrance to the trail. So from Regent Street, 150 meters south, and from Lock 7 Viewing Center, 150 meters north is where you'll find most of it. So putting a receptacle and signage at the entry point to the trail so that you have to walk past it and know that it's there before you even take your dog into the area.
sure.
And the same thing with signage in parks. And I noticed the signage in the JC Park, but only after walking through it for 3 years, because I had my head always down because I knew that I had to step around stuff in order to get through there. So
Yeah.
anyway,
no,
I will do some more looking, and then I'll draft a sort of a brief paper. with
Okay.
Thoughts and analysis.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Try to get it to you for next meeting, next regular meeting.
Okay. Leslie, do you have anything for the roundtable?
I'd just like to point you all to the library display window. Thorold Garden Club is putting a display in there.
Okay.
And one of the things that has come up lately when we've been discussing being able to do that again is that a lot of community groups don't realize that that is a good venue for advertising what they're involved in. And that goes for this committee as well. They're always looking for someone to take it over for a month. And if you had any sort of, your signage or anything to let people know what's going on, a lot of people don't never go out to City Hall.
Yeah.
So I just thought I'd bring that up
Okay.
because that came up in our discussions recently.
Okay. That's a good idea. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Longo, anything for the roundtable?
Nothing today, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, I do have one thing that I want to talk about, and there was an item that was brought up at the council meeting, and it was put forward by the Parks, Trails, and Recreation Advisory Committee. And they put forward I guess a request to have staff look into maintenance costs on the trail that runs, I guess, between Lock 6 and Lock 7, the circle trail. I mean, I walk that quite a bit, and I know the city does go down there and does maintenance on the trail. They're weed whacking along the chain link fence, and then on the retaining wall, there's sometimes sucker branches growing out of the rocks that they trim and they kind of clean it up. But I'd like to ask that the city involve us with a response that they have, because I want to know exactly what the committee is asking for when they're talking about the cost of maintenance. I want to know what the Parks and Recs and Trail Committee is asking, if they want more trees removed or how much is being cut. Because I'm getting people in the neighborhood reaching out to me, and I walk that trail almost every day, and the amount of tree removal that's done on the other side of the chain link fence by private residences is getting out of hand. On Chapel Street South, where you turn the corner at Linden, there was a lot of clear cutting done there about 2 years ago, and the corner at that particular road, you can see the pavement is leaning towards the embankment. That actually did get discussed a couple of years ago when we had a traffic related issue at the Portland and Chapel Street South intersection. The city was aware of the amount of traffic that was coming down that street. It's marked local, but the traffic that comes through is pushing the pavement to the one side. On the trail down by Albert Street, there's a section on both sides of the railroad tracks, probably more than 100 feet that have been cleared, right up to the chain link fence. And the chain link fence in one section is actually starting to lean downwards towards the rail tracks. I don't know what the city can do about this. It's not their property, but I don't know how we can go about getting the message out that these people, what they're doing, there's two key components to those trees existing on the embankment, and it's to prevent soil erosion. And you can see what's happening with the soil in certain areas. It's washing away because the trees that are there are dying and no longer able to retain the wall. But you're also doing away with a lot of important habitat for various wildlife that lives along there. So I don't know where we can go with this, how we can get the city to prevent people from doing this. Councillor Longo, have you got a comment that we can?
No, I don't know the answer, Chair. I'd be guessing at this point. But I agree, when this report does come back from staff regarding maintenance issues, I could bring it up at that point to ask these questions and see if there's any way. As you mentioned, it's not city property. I believe it's owned by whichever railroad owns it now, whether it's Trillium or Geo. I'm not sure, but I know the city did contract out to have some vegetation removed at one point. But I know there are residents doing it on their own also. We all know that. So how do we educate them? I guess it would be just education, because again, it's not our property. We can't enforce anything. But yeah, if you'd like, I could bring it up with staff before then, or I could wait for the report, however you'd like me to handle it.
Yeah, when you refer to the section that the city contracted, that was in front of the viewing center.
Correct.
I was part of the tourism advisory committee when that was done. I believe it was about 150 feet that was cleared from Peter Street Bridge going north.
Yeah.
It was a very expensive endeavor. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was $35,000 for that work to be done. And it was also made known to the city that that work would have to be redone again in about 5 years' time. That was 2019 when it was done. So if you go down and have a look, the trees that have grown back aren't quite high enough to block the view from the viewing deck, but in another year or so they will be. So the city's going to be on, they're going to be looking at going down there and trimming it again. That's perfectly understandable, but the people that their backyards butt against the cycling trail going down there and clearing so that they can have a view, they could be imposing some heavy reconstruction costs that the city's going to have to bear, especially on Chapel's or Carlton, Chapel Street South at the corner of Linden, because you can clearly see that pavement is got a different elevation height towards the embankment, and sooner or later the city's going to have to step in and they're going to have to do some reinforcement work in there if it doesn't stop.
Okay. Well, what I can do, Chair, is I'll send an email to CAO and Jeff Holman, and I will advise them of the concerns and see if they have a recommendation on what the city can do. Maybe it's maybe they could send letters out to the area residents who abut the area, just to make them aware of what they're doing, what problems and challenges this incurs on us, and maybe that's a good starting point to educate these people.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to be the one that, upsets people, because I like living where I am. I don't want my house graffitied. Okay, thank you very much. I think that's all I had to say for roundtable. So if there's no further discussions, the next meeting is scheduled for July 7th, 2023. And meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.